Ja, Nir Oz hade en väldigt tråkig Pesach-sederafton i år. Det var många som saknades vid sederbordet. Och i Israel säger man never again is now. Och dessutom så minns man alla stupade. Båda våra gäster har blivit av med sina bagage. Det har varit lite dramatiskt här idag faktiskt. Igår så var det också en tung dag. Vi mindes förintelsen. Förintelsen som inträffade då 80 år sedan. Och jag såg direktsändningen själv från Yad Vashem med mycket starka tal av både president Isaac Herzog, jag känner så många Isaac Herzog och premiärministern Benjamin Netanyahu. En mycket stark ceremoni och med speciell anspelning på det som händer idag. Dock vill jag då ha sagt, visst det är fruktansvärt det som har hänt, men vi får aldrig jämföra det med förintelsen. Det är två helt separata händelser och det är ingenting som kan jämföras med förintelsen. Så det måste vi ha klart för oss. Men nu kämpar vi för att gisslan ska komma hem. Och det pågår förhandlingar och det går fram och tillbaks och vi vet fortfarande inte resultatet av dessa förhandlingar. Man får en känsla av att Hamas terroriserar oss genom att spela teater. Men det vet jag ingenting om. Kanske ambassadören kan berätta lite mer om det. Hur som helst, livet går vidare och vi blickar framåt. Och nästa vecka så firar vi Israel 76 år. En fantastisk dag. Och därmed hälsar jag årZiv Nevo Kulman, vår Sverigeambassadör. Välkommen på scenen. Welcome.
Max. Good evening. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me. It's now you can hear me. Okay, I was afraid after the previous video, so it's a very difficult act to follow. And also Rita, an amazing act to follow. We love you all. And it's an honor for me to be surrounded by so many friends on this special week. Because as Max mentioned, this is a very special week that leads from Yom HaShoah, Yom HaZikaron, and of course to the happy day of Yom HaAtzmaut. This year, obviously, we're not so happy. Very challenging times. And I promised Max that I will be positive tonight, and I will share with you some good examples. Because, you know, this is the time to see who your true friends are. And this is the time when we realize that friends in need are friends indeed. And I would like to share with you three thoughts, three examples of exceptional people and organizations that have managed over the last 7 months to reach out to more friends, reach out to people in Sweden that perhaps had a different view of Israel before. And you're actually going to meet them all tonight. So the first one, of course, is Rita Lifshitz. You heard the amazing story of a Swedish mitnadevet, a volunteer in a kibbutz, falls in love with an Israeli, falls in love with the kibbutz, stays in Israel. This is where her family is. And the message that comes from Rita to so many Swedish people in the media, but also in the political spheres. When you were here in November and we organized a visit for the families of the hostages, everybody melts when they meet you. You even got Tobias Billström to hug you, or you hugged him. And that was on the front page of Dagens Nyheter. That was a beautiful photo. And the story of, it's what many people remember of Israel, right? The love affair between Sweden and Israel, which is in a kibbutz, which is about certain values, and how shattered we feel today when peace activists, people who believed in the two-state solution, a peace activist like Oded Lifshitz, Yocheved Lifshitz, the entire kibbutz is hit so hard by Hamas. And this is, I think, a very important message that not all Swedes understood. And I really thank you, Rita, for the amazing work that you did and do with the media, and you continue to do now. And thank you, KKL, for inviting her for this event, because I think over the last few months, we saw the importance of your work and your message. Now, the second person, which I salute tonight, is another great example of reaching out to people who perhaps had different images and different ideas about Israel. It's Jonathan Conricus. Who would imagine that the spokesperson for IDF, for international media, who gives briefings in English, also speaks perfect Skånska? Did you plan that? The fact that somebody wearing uniform, which you know doesn't always pass very well in Swedish media, the fact that somebody is wearing uniform, IDF uniform, actually can speak in the Swedish language to the Swedish people, like the way Jonathan spoke in Agenda, or in interviews that he gave to all major newspapers here. I think this is astonishing, and I often meet friends who say, you really have to do one thing, bring Jonathan. Here you did. And we are all looking forward to hearing him tonight. But another example of reaching out in different ways that people perhaps didn't think about before is the work of KKL. Now, I don't know if you followed the foreign affairs debate, the foreign affairs policy debate in Riksdagen. Every year around February, this year it was I think the 14th of February, the government through the foreign minister presents a foreign policy statement. So the foreign minister made a very balanced statement about current affairs. Of course, it included the major things on the agenda, such as the war in Ukraine, major things on the Swedish foreign affairs agenda, such as Nordic-Baltic cooperation, and obviously, because of the war in Gaza, it also included a statement on the Swedish government's position on that. Now, the debate always follows, this is the nature of the debate in a parliament, it follows a debate with different party speakers for foreign affairs. Guess what? 90%, if not 95%, of the debate following was about the Middle East, with great rift between the parties in coalition, the parties in opposition. And one thing that really stood out, I think they spent something like 10 minutes on it, was the visit organized by KKL to Israel by members of the Christian Democrats, headed by our great friend Magnus Oskarsson, who's here, if you haven't noticed him yet. But there was great debate. Who paid for it? How did it go? And then there was a whole smear campaign that was debated in the parliament, whether KKL is an organization that supports settlements and whether the visit included visits outside the 67 border, and a whole disinformation campaign about KKL being an organization that basically, according to what the people from the extreme party said, that KKL is basically an organization that organizes buying of lands only for Jews and kicking away all the Arabs and all kinds of incredible things that I could not imagine that I was hearing in the Swedish parliament. Now, why am I telling you all of this? I mean, I think KKL got a lot of publicity for the wrong reason, but the reason I'm sharing this thought with you tonight, this is an example of a delegitimization campaign. A delegitimization campaign where you're taking one of the most well-established organizations which is associated with Zionism, with the whole idea of Jews going back to their homeland and buying land. And the whole dream, you know, the KKL Kupot, the Kupot HaKchulot, the Pushke, exactly. This is a dream of Jewish communities all over the world. KKL, there is nothing more mainstream than that for the Zionist movement. To take that organization and to delegitimize it is delegitimizing the state of Israel. And this is exactly that campaign. This is exactly what people who don't like us are trying to do. It is the same when it comes to dehumanizing Tzahal, IDF. When it says, you know, what the Tzahal soldiers do, what the Israeli soldiers do is worse than what the Nazis did. How can you say these kind of things? Or accusing Israel of genocide. The Genocide Convention was created after the Holocaust as lessons from the Holocaust. You can criticize what Israel does and how it protects human lives and the lives of civilians, which is something very dear, which is part of international law, but accusing Israel of genocide, that is dehumanizing it. There's lots of double standard. There are lots of fights that we all have to battle together. I mentioned Jonathan and Skånska. Of course, we look at what's happening in the streets of Malmö nowadays. And we ask ourselves, how can people live there? How can the Jewish community live there? Eurovision is just like an example, so the entire world is looking at it. But living in Malmö is not easy any day of the year for the Jewish community. And we know that the government and the authorities are doing everything they can to protect Jewish life in Sweden. But there are so many challenges, and we need so many friends like you gathered with us here tonight. I think I spoke more than I promised that I would, but that's what happens when you give a diplomat a microphone. Now it's yours.
When you came to Sweden, two foreign ministers hugged each other in Jerusalem. Just before that, with the diary of Raoul Wallenberg, Yair Lapid and Ann Linde. Today, your relation to Sweden started as a love affair, you could say. Today, the embassy is closed. And can you describe right now the situation for you and the embassy?
The current relation between the Swedish government and the Israeli government is good. I mean, you follow the Swedish government's position when it comes to Israel's right to defend itself within the limits of international humanitarian law. And you see the friendly remarks, for example, the party leaders' debate just a few days ago. So the relations are good. Now, security is tightened up in embassies around the world. It's been since October 7th, as you can imagine. It has been quite a challenge for all of our embassies and for all of our missions and for Israeli tourists. And unfortunately, because this is part of the anti-Semitic campaign of blaming Jews for the actions of Israel, it's also been tight in Jewish communities around the world. I mean, you all came in to Beit today, and you know the security situation in communities around the world. That is quite unfortunate. So I think, of course, we have certain challenges here in Sweden. We had a grenade attack. And all I can say is that whoever needs to take care of it is taking care of it. And whoever needs to protect our embassy and our staff and our families and the community as well is doing their job. It's just complicated days right now.
The other week we heard on news that just the same time as Lapid and Linde met, Here in Sweden, there was a death threat to Iran agents that the government was informed about, wanted to kill Jews here in Sweden. And that was sent outside the country. Were you aware of that, or when were you aware of this?
Tonight are very security oriented. I learned
Wonder why.
I learned about it from the media, but it is no surprise. It is no surprise that our enemies, and you know very well who our enemies are. It is no surprise that our enemies are trying to hit Israeli targets and unfortunately Jewish targets as well worldwide. This is quite unfortunate, and luckily they were caught.
Okay. Thank you, Max.